Erev Tov, everyone, and welcome. It is Monday night. It is 8 p.m. here on the east side of the United States, here in the diaspora. This is the House of Seven Beggars. Therefore, it must be Zeyde's Story Corner. That's right, Zeyde's Story Corner. And, of course, we started out the show, as we will be for the rest of the month, with the song by the Grand Rebbe of Keruv, who passed away the day after the last day of Pesach. So, good to have everybody here. We were not on last Wednesday night because Rabbi Shlomo was doing a show with Rabbi Bernard for Yom HaShoah, in observance of Yom HaShoah. So we will be back this Wednesday with the Torah study. So I guess we should probably get to the stories. Yeah, okay, we can get to the stories here, and then let's see. So let me get you on your camera. See if we can do this right. There I am. Okay, good to have you all here. I hope that you had a chance to read the rabbi's remembrance of the Grand Rebbe of Keruv And I hope that you will join us in saying the one pasuk of Tehillim every single day. Okay, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, go to the rabbi's page on Facebook and you can read about it there. Okay, so the last time we left off on a cliffhanger. You know, we do that just for Donald. He likes the cliffhangers. Okay, so the story we were reading was called A Shocking Tale of a Viceroy. And that is where we are going to pick up this evening. Now, we are going to go back a little bit just so that everybody remembers what we were talking about in the story. So anyway, the rabbi of the they would be the head chief rabbi of Amsterdam had passed away, and he had told them to go and find another rabbi, and that's where we will pick up the story tonight. Okay, so when they read his will, this is what they found. Let messengers be sent to such and such a town where a rabbi by the name of Cashman lives. Let him be made rabbi of the Jews of Amsterdam. So, two messengers were chosen to find Reb Cashman and bring him to Amsterdam. They rode and rode, visiting towns and villages until, by the help of God, they arrived at their destination and put up at an inn. When they had eaten and rested, they approached the innkeeper. Tell us, sir, where does the rabbi, Reb Cashman, live? The innkeeper said, I've lived here for, I don't know how many years, but there's never been a rabbi with that name. So, the messengers asked the same question of other people, who all said this same thing. Can you imagine such a thing? Well, they concluded that the rabbi must have been mistaken, and they returned home. Back in Amsterdam, a special assembly was called, and the people decided that their rabbi would not have made such a mistake about something in his will. So, two new messengers were dispatched to the town to examine the matter thoroughly. There, they went from house to house and searched the village from one end to the other. But no one had ever heard the name of Reb Cashman. They were on the point of returning home when one of the messengers said, Maybe we ought to go to that settlement over there, those few houses in the open field. They went there and came to a small hut. An old woman and a girl sat there plucking feathers. Hopefully they were plucking a chicken. It doesn't say that, but I would think that would be what they were doing, plucking a chicken. Okay, well, anyway, so they were plucking feathers. Maybe they were plucking them out of a pillow. I don't know. Anyway, they were plucking feathers. The messenger said, Good evening. Good evening and gutiar, came the reply. What do you want? One of the messengers asked whether Rabbi Cushman lived there. The old woman nodded, and the messengers were delighted. He'll be here soon, most likely, she said. They decided to wait. As they waited, the door opened and an old man came into the room. The woman went to the oven, from which she took out a dish of food. The old man washed his hands. He recited the bracha and sat down to eat. He paid no attention to the messengers, as if they were not even there. When he had finished, they approached him. "Our rabbi of blessed memory," they said, "enjoining us in his will to bring to Amsterdam a certain Reb Cushman, so that he may take our rabbi's place." Well, Reb Cushman said not a word, nor did he look at them. It was as if they were invisible, as if no one were speaking at all. He rose, walked into his room, and went to sleep. Imagine that. And that's where we left off last week. Okay, we pick up with this story now. The messengers, seeing that they would accomplish nothing, said good night and went away. But they returned the next morning. But no matter what they said, he kept silent. Even when they nagged him, he remained mute as a wall. Then they begged him for pity and said they would not leave without him. He replied, "Why are you burdening me? I don't understand any of this. You want me to come? Very well, I'll come. Just stop tormenting me." That was what they were waiting to hear. They put the old man and his wife and daughter into their wagon and drove off. When they arrived in Amsterdam, how happy everyone was! Reb Cushman was welcomed with a parade. He was given a fine house with large rooms. Joy reigned. But the rabbi was silent, even though the people were dying to hear him say a few holy words. Finally, after much coaxing, he said, "Dear friends, I don't know anything." This offended everyone. "What kind of a rabbi is this?" cried the synagogue officers. "He must be crazy." So the people began to put distance between themselves and Reb Cushman. And finally they moved him out of the fine house and installed him and his wife and daughter in a small room at the city's edge. And the community chose another rabbi. Now, we get back to the viceroy. Now, the viceroy was a great carouser and gambler, a man who danced all night at balls, who poured out money like sand, And now, on top of everything, he had acquired a mistress. So, he needed even more money. Where to get it? He went to the tax collector, Reb Azrael, and said, because of this and that and such, I need a few rubles. Reb Azrael handed him some money, and the viceroy went away. Not even an hour later, he came back again, and then again, and again. Finally, Reb Azrael said, I can't give you any more. The viceroy banged furiously on the collector's door, calling, I'll raise against you the way Haman rose against you. And he stormed off to the chief priest. Together, they plotted to take dreadful vengeance on the Reb Azrael and all the Jews. Just before Pesach, they killed a Gentile boy and put his body, along with several bottles of blood, into Reb Azrael's house. Then they shouted, the Jews have killed a boy. So they ordered a search of the Jewish houses, and when the murdered child was found, the old tax collector was taken in chains to prison. Meanwhile, the wicked viceroy wrote to the emperor, the Jews have risen against the state, and they are slaughtering our children. The emperor replied, do what you like, which was all the viceroy wanted to hear. So, he issued a decree that on Yom Kippur, the Jewish Day of Atonement, the inhabitants of all the towns and villages must gather to see Reb Azrael hanged. God forbid. The decree also said that anyone could do what they liked with the Jews. What a terrible thing to do, huh? As the day of the hanging approached, the cries and lamentations pouring from the Jewish homes would have restored hearing to the deaf. Feverish prayers to our Father in heaven rose from the synagogues. Finally, it occurred to someone to consult Reb Kashman. A delegation was sent to his room, where they found him wearing his talit and kittel, his prayer shawl and robe, and intoning his prayers with so much grief that the group was afraid to move. Seeing them, he said, go quickly and command everyone to eat the meal that precedes our fast as if tomorrow were Yom Kippur. The Jews did as he commanded, and that evening everyone gathered in the synagogue. And when Reb Kashman, standing at the podium, reciting the Kol Nidre prayer, it is said that the walls quivered and the heavens shook. And each time he spoke, thunder roared, after which came the sounds of the congregation's weeping and lamentations. When the Musaf prayers were finished, Reb Kashman addressed the people. My brothers, an evil decree hangs over us, but God's compassion is great. I am going to the emperor. Wait for my return. And with that, he vanished. Far away, the emperor had just eaten and was strolling in the garden. Growing weary, he sat down on a bench and fell asleep. He dreamed that he was drowning in a river of blood. And each time he struggled to the bank, the viceroy thrust him back. At last, he was saved from drowning by a little old man, a Jew, who ran up and drove the viceroy off. Now, the journey from Amsterdam to the emperor's palace ordinarily required some days. But Reb Kashman accomplished it in an instant. The emperor was just waking. Seeing that Reb Kashman looked like the Jew who had rescued him in his dream, the emperor said, "Holy man, I feel evil around me. Can you explain it?" Reb Kashman answered, "Great Emperor, it is clear that someone wishes you ill, and you know who it is, your viceroy. He and your generals have plotted your death, commanded that his house be searched. Papers that are in a drawer there will prove his guilt. And great Emperor, you should also know that the viceroy is tormenting the Jews of your kingdom. He has exacted tribute from us and has not given you a groschen. He squandered it all, even as he skins us Jews alive. Now, he has killed a Gentile boy and thrown the corpse into Reb Azriel's house, creating a blood libel. Great Emperor, stand by us. Issue a proclamation to delay the execution while you determine whether I am telling the truth." The emperor called to his general. "Take a regiment of soldiers," he said, "and go to Amsterdam. Delay the decree. Search the viceroy's house. If you find proof of wickedness, carry out whatever sentence he deserves." Reb Kashman returned miraculously to the synagogue. It was time for Nileh, and the concluding Yom Kippur prayers. When the last evening service was done, he said, "Brothers, go and break your fast. Let those of you who have food give it to those who have none. Things will be well. Reb Azriel will be saved." In the morning, after daybreak, crowds of Gentiles began to gather on all the roads from all corners of the land. Whole villages arrived bringing ladder wagons to carry away Jewish property. They were armed with scythes and rakes and axes. But no Jew appeared anywhere. They had shut themselves up in cellars and attics. The gallows had been erected in the market square, and there the Gentiles massed. At the time decreed, Rebbe Israel was led in. The chains on his feet made it hard for him to walk, so he was driven along with blows from gun butts. He went quietly. So much goodness glowed in his face that the Gentiles fell silent and did not touch him. As the guards were setting Rebbe Zeriel under the gallows to throw the noose over his neck, the viceroy, that Haman, said, "Do you want to live? Then become a convert." Rebbe Zeriel raised his eyes to heaven and cried, "Shema Yisrael! Hear, all Israel!" Then he was silent. As the executioners were about to begin, shots were heard, and the crowd saw riders approaching. The general arrived and handed the emperor's order to the viceroy. The noose was removed from Rebbe Israel's neck. The general quietly signaled his men to watch the viceroy and his riders surrounding the viceroy's palace. When the soldiers began to search, they found papers describing a plot to kill the emperor and usurp his kingdom. So the viceroy was hanged on the gallows that had been prepared for Rebbe Zeriel. The Gentiles scattered like mice, while the Jews left their hiding places and crowded into the streets, kissing and embracing each other for joy. It was clear that the instrument of their happiness was Reb Kashman. Yet, he was nowhere to be seen. They went to his room, but it was empty. Riders were sent out on all roads, and they found him at last in a forest. Throwing themselves at his feet, they said, "Holy Rabbi, don't leave us." Reb Kashman said, "There is no further need for me here. I must go wherever Jews are in trouble, wherever a Haman has risen." Then he and his wife and daughter disappeared. When the emperor returned to Amsterdam, he was sorry to hear that Reb Kashman was gone. "I didn't even get to thank him," he said. From that time on, the emperor bestowed many favors on the Jews. He excused them from taxes, and there was prosperity and abundance on all sides. And they all thanked the Creator and lived happily. This shocking tale has been told so later generations may know and remember what once came to pass. Isn't that a wonderful story? My goodness, that is, it's send the chills up your spine, huh? Okay. So, we are at our halfway point now. So we are going to take our break, and when we come back, we are going to do another story called The Leper Boy and Eliyahu Hanavi. So please, everybody stay tuned, and we will be back in 6.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Delicious things to eat. The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
It's intermission time, folks, so hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right over to our refreshment center for the most extravagant array of refreshment goodies ever assembled under one roof. Enjoy breathtaking, mouth-watering goodies, everything from a snack to a delicious full meal. At our refreshment center, you'll find a large variety of goodies to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, or your sweet tooth. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Visit our refreshment center now. The show starts in 5 minutes. The show starts in 4 minutes. The show starts in 3 minutes. The show starts in 2 minutes. show starts in 1 minute. And now, on with the show.
And we are back, just as we promised. Baruch Hashem. Okay, we forgot to announce the people that were here with us listening to the stories tonight, so we catch that up right now. Okay, so let us go over here to the chat and we see, well, of course, Donald was there first, number 1. And then we had Guy and Kelsey Lynn and Delane, Marshall, Shlomo and Shoshi. Let's see who else. Joel, and there's one more, Marilyn. And I think we have everybody. I'm sorry if I missed anybody. Please forgive me, but I think we have everybody. Okay, so let us move on to our next story. This is a good one. This is a really good lesson here. This one is called The Leper Boy and Elijah the Prophet. Okay, so once upon a time, here we go. We're back to that again, folks. Once upon a time. Okay, here we go. Once upon a time, a poor leper boy used to sit on a box in the middle of a great square, and people who went by gave him what bits of food they could. One day, a carriage drove up, and out stepped a man. It was Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, who said to the boy, "I'm an uncle of yours, and I'm going to make you respectable." "Good, uncle," said the boy. Then Elijah took the boy with him in the carriage, and they rode off to the forest. There he pulled the boy's hat off and threw it up into a tree. What significance that has, I have no idea, but he threw it up in the tree just the same. The boy's skin turned clean and healthy. Then the prophet washed the boy, dressed him in fine clothes, and had him apprenticed to a baker, which I like to do. I like to bake. Well, sometime later, Elijah visited the boy and asked, "How is it being a baker?" "Not so good," said the boy. I often burn my hands. You know, they make potholders for those kinds of things. But anyway, often I burn my hands. "Well, what would you like to be?" asked Eliyahu. "Dear uncle," said the boy, "maybe I'd like to be a tailor." So Elijah apprenticed him to a tailor. Some time later, the prophet visited the boy and asked, "How is it being a tailor?" "Not so good, dear uncle dear. I keep sticking myself with the needles." "Well, what would you like to be?" asked Eliyahu. Uncle dear, maybe I'd like to be a shoemaker. So, Eliyahu apprenticed him to a shoemaker. Some time later, he visited the boy and asked, "And how is it being a shoemaker?" "Dear uncle, being a shoemaker isn't working out too well either. I keep banging my knees and smearing my hands." "Well, what would you like to be?" asked Eliyahu. "I'd like to be a barber surgeon." So, Eliyahu had him trained as a barber surgeon. Some time later, he visited the boy and asked, "How is it being a barber surgeon?" "Uncle dear, not good. I'm at everybody's beck and call. I'm constantly running around, setting leeches on patients." "Well, what would you like to be?" asked Eliyahu. "I think I would like to be a doctor." Well, sometime later, he visited the boy and asked, "And how is it being a doctor?" "Uncle dear, that's not so good either. For a doctor, there's neither night nor day. I'm constantly running to homes of my patients." "Well," said Eliyahu, "what would you like to be?" "Dear uncle," said the boy, "I think I'd like to be a merchant." So Eliyahu had him trained as a merchant. But being a merchant didn't please the boy either, and he asked for a career in the army. Eliyahu had the boy trained successively as a company commander, a battalion commander, a brigadier commander, a corps commander, and an army commander. Always the boy was unhappy, either because he was too low on the chain of command or because his responsibilities were too heavy. Talk about hard to please, huh? Well, finally Eliyahu said, "Well, then what would you like to be, my son?" "I'd like to be the Tsar," said the boy. "Well, very well," said Elisha. "Be the Tsar and rule the country well." Well, now sometime later, Eliyahu visited the boy and asked, "Well, what's it like being the Tsar?" "Not too good," replied the boy. "I've got to worry about the whole country." "Well, my son, what would you like to be?" "Uncle," replied the boy, "maybe I'd like to be God himself." "Such chutzpah!" "Well," said Eliyahu, "let's go up to heaven and we will hear what God has to say about that." "Perhaps now you'll understand," said God to Eliyahu the prophet, "that sometimes I actually know what I'm doing. And now you, Eliyahu, come over here with me. As for you, you leper, creep back to your box where you belong." How about that, huh? Okay. So, This one is called the Trustees. It's a short one, but it's a very poignant one. I mean, it seems a little odd and a little maybe not so nice on the surface, but there is a great lesson to be learned here. So, the story is called The Trustees, and it begins. Once, no, not once upon a time. Once there was a man and his wife, Chaim and Shifra, who had two children. One Shabbos morning, while Chaim was off to synagogue, the children were taken suddenly ill and died. When Chaim came home, he sat down to eat and said to Shifra, "Where can the children be?" "Oh, they're playing with other children in the neighbor's courtyard," Shifra replied. After Chaim finished his cholent, his Shabbat Bin and Balisto, he went back to the synagogue and stayed for the late evening prayers. When he returned, he sat down to eat, but the food somehow did not agree with him. So he asked Shifra again, "Have the children been home since this morning?" "Oh, yes, they were just here. They ate and then they went out to play." While Chaim ate, Shifra asked his opinion about a matter of religious law. If someone leaves something in the care of someone else, and then later comes to reclaim it, is the person to whom the thing has been entrusted required to give it back? Chaim said, "What a question! Of course he must give it back at once, without another word." "In that case," Shifra said, "come with me into the other room. I want to show you something." When Chaim followed her and saw the children were dead, he began to tear his hair. "Hush," Shifra said. "You said it yourself. If one entrusts something to another person and then comes and asks for it again, it must be given back. God entrusted the children to us, and now he has taken them back again." And that's the end of this story. Think about it. Okay. We are going to go on to the next story. I think this might be a cliffhanger. We shall see. Okay. So, can you guess how this one going to start? I bet you can. Once upon a time, there was a brother and sister who were very rich. Because they did not want their fortune divided, they decided they would never marry, but would live with each other. And the sister became pregnant, and the people in the town began to talk. You know how that is. People are going to talk, huh? Fingers were pointing at the couple as at the most sinful pair in the world. And when the day came that the sister gave birth, anger blazed up against them, so that they had to move away. They sold their possessions and divided the money, and each of them went to a different town. Now, In her new home, the woman let it be known that she was a young widow, and to hide the fact of her sin, she decided to get rid of the infant. She wrapped it up and put it into a basket along with 2,000 rubles. Then she wrote a letter explaining that the child was Jewish and that the money would belong to whomever raised him. After the woman had left the basket at the door of the synagogue, the first person to come along was a malamed, a school teacher. He unwrapped the baby boy, found the money and the letter, and decided to raise the child himself. With the help of a wet nurse, the infant thrived and grew. The child was hardly 3 years old when he asked to be sent to Cheder, to school, where he soon showed signs of genius. This made the other children unhappy, so they called him Mamzer, bastard. One day, when he was demonstrating formidable scholarly powers, and the rabbi was praising him, another pupil called out, "If we'd been found in the synagogue, we'd be as smart as he is." Now, this distressed the boy terribly, and, with tears in his eyes, he insisted that the teacher tell him the truth. The malamed, seeing that it would be worse if he did not show him the letter, and told him everything. So the boy packed his things and took the 2,000 rubles, which the teacher had saved for him. Then he went away to study in a distant city where nobody knew his secret. When he was 19, his mother too came to that city. She was very rich and wanted a husband, but because she was already some 40 years old, she could not expect to marry a wealthy young man. So she went to the head of the yeshiva, who promised the 19-year-old genius to her as a groom. And soon they were married. But some time after their wedding, when she was returning from the mikvah, the ritual bath, certain signs appeared in her that showed she was impure. The young man pleaded with her to tell him if she had any sin on her conscience, and finally she told him everything. Early the next morning, the young man went away, taking with him what was left of the 2,000 rubles. He wandered through villages and towns until he came to a village inn, and there he stayed. Day by day he was not seen at all. He appeared only at night. The innkeeper thought his behavior suspicious and began to spy on him. He found that the young man usually walked far into the forest, put on a talit and tefillin, and beat his chest and wept as he prayed. At last, the innkeeper told him that it was a sin to punish oneself so severely. But the young man explained that he was doing penance, A while later, a young penitent noticed a vacant cellar near the inn. He begged the innkeeper to lock him in there and throw the key away. The innkeeper wouldn't hear of it. But when the young man offered him 100 rubles, he allowed himself to be persuaded. He gave the penitent 2 loaves of bread and a pitcher of water, locked the cellar, and threw away the key. Then he forgot about him. It happened that the tzaddik died in a certain town, and the townspeople did not know who was worthy to take his place. But before the saintly man expired, he told them to send the most distinguished of the congregation to search out for a man locked in a cellar, because that man was worthy to be the rabbi. The townspeople traveled here and there until they found the penitent in the cellar. They asked him to be the rabbi, but at first he refused. Then they explained who it was that had sent them. He told them to come back in a month. At that time, he agreed to become the rabbi of their town. The people began traveling to him from all over to get his blessing or his advice. Among them came the woman who was both his mother and his wife. He had a divine sentiment that she would arrive, and he gave orders that no richly dressed woman was to be admitted into his presence. She saw, however, that there seemed to be some objection to her wealthy clothes, so she dressed herself anew like a poor woman. When she was at his door, he cried out, "Ribono shel olam, O Lord of the universe, why dost thou punish me?" And she fell dead on the spot. He sat for the prescribed days of mourning on her behalf, and when he was asked why, he replied that it was because she had died in his house. And that's the end of the story. Kind of a short one, kind of a cut off there right at the very end kind of story, eh? Okay, so no cliffhanger this week. So next week we are going to start a new story called Upon Me. So I want to thank everybody for being here tonight, and I hope you will be with us on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern for the Torah study with Rabbi A. and Rabbi Reuven. Also on Friday night at 8 p.m. for Kabbalat and Ma'ariv, the Shabbat service. And then again on Shabbat morning at 10 a.m. Eastern for Shacharit and Musaf, Parsha Kedoshim. I hope you will all be with us. Until the next time, my dear friends, when we are together, we shall say, Laila Tov.